Welcome to the Learneezee podcast. I'm here with Patrick, who started this podcast to speak to expats about the expat journey. Today, we're talking to Cheryl Leonhardt, a Jamaican teacher, a poet, and a storyteller, been living in Germany for a long time. But what strikes me the most is she hasn't lost her Jamaican soul. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, welcome, Cheryl. Uh, thanks, Andrew. So, Cheryl, let's start with language. What languages do you speak?
Hmm. So, we were colonies of the British, so British English. In school, I learned Spanish, and moving to Germany, then I had to learn German. And of course, we have our local dialect.
Oh, Jamaican patois. Yeah,
Yes, that's it.
yeah. My family we're from Haiti, and we speak Creole, so it's what we speak in the house, right?
Yes.
And now that you're in Germany, how often do you speak Jamaican?
But my daughter speaks it well, and I am teaching it to my granddaughter, so I get to use it more often than you would realize. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so that's like a homey feeling, yeah?
Definitely. It's like a private language. As kids, we had gypsy. Do you know gypsy, Andrew?
I don't actually.
Never heard of it
Really?
myself.
As children in school, we had this gypsy language where you would speak alapa, alapu, ala, and only kids understood that. So it's like gypsy.
Okay. It's like you add something inside of a sentence to code it in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think we did something similar actually.
Yes.
So, Cheryl, speaking of home, speaking of the Caribbean where we all have roots, you grew up in a relatively big Caribbean family, right?
I'm the second of four.
You're the second of fourth. And
Yeah.
that, I mean, I could kind of relate to how that feels. I grew up in a family of 9.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and we had to be very resourceful when it came to getting some things that you wanted
Okay.
in life. You'd have to hustle a bit, because you can't always get what you need when you're in a big family. How do you relate to that? Is that something similar? That's how you grew up in Jamaica?
Yes, but I was the first girl and I was more of a tomboy. And so that put me at an advantage. So I could wheedle my way out of situations and still get what I want. But as the first girl, my mother always told us that you cannot be beautiful and uneducated. It doesn't work. She said, therefore, you have to concentrate on what is happening at school. Your schoolwork is important. And so, therefore, we placed a lot of focus there, right? So, everything else was on the side.
And in the end, you became a teacher yourself, right? So,
Yes.
um, do you think your family shaped that choice to become a teacher? Yeah.
I think it lies in the blood. I, I ran away from it for a long time. My first degree is in travel and tourism, actually. And then, due to the lack of holidays, I decided to go into teaching. Yeah.
And
Yes.
this was tourism in Jamaica,
Yes, I
actual.
worked with a travel and tour company, yes.
So there was I mean, everybody knows Jamaica, right? This is
Hmm.
probably the land for tourism. A lot of Germans probably go there every single year.
Hmm.
And in Trinidad, where
Hmm.
I'm from, I think there's like this subtle jealousy towards Jamaica.
Like, yes.
Here, here in Germany, I get called Bob Marley's grandson.
Hmm.
And when I tell people that I'm from Trinidad, they say, Which part of Jamaica is that? You know? But with all of the beauty that Jamaica has to offer, and you were even in tourism,
Hmm.
and with all of the culture and the community, why did you leave?
Family. Family. So my daughter decided to relocate to Germany. And after a while, my husband said she needs help to settle here. So he came. I was busy working. After a year, I thought this is not going to work. So I took a long vacation and at the end decided I'll stay here.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
And when you got to Germany, what was the biggest culture shock? What took the longest to adapt to?
There is still something I have not adapted to, and it is swimming in the sea.
In German, sea means lake.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there
lake,
is no
yeah.
sea. There's this
Yeah,
swimming
in the lake.
dirty toilet water. Maybe is that the correct
Well,
translation?
the first,
No, it's the lake.
the
The lake.
first time I went, and my husband said, "Oh, we're here." I said, "Here, where?" And he said, "We're going to swim." I said, "In what?" And I'm really thinking if he was joking.
Really?
Yes. And I'm looking at I said, "I'm not going in that." He said, "It's clean. They tested." I said, "Wonderful, but it's brown."
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not doing that. No. No.
they do have some nicer ones, but yes, it is quite it's not so fun. I agree with you.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not
Especially
blue.
during
They
autumn
have some
and-
turquoise lakes here.
Well, then you get me in. Yes.
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
then we'll talk about that later after the
Yes.
So, actually, just to track back, then, you did a few years, as you were talking about, teaching in Jamaica, and in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, discipline is almost like the cornerstone of education,
Oh,
especially when it comes to teenagers. When I was growing up, the teachers were really strict, you know, and in Germany, I don't get that feeling. That it feels more informal, focused more on open engagement rather than this kind of teaching method of the Caribbean. How did you translate? How did you adjust to moving?
So, my first note in an introduction is always to tell my students that I am a Jamaican teacher, which means there will be elements of discipline in all my classrooms. And it doesn't matter where I am. You speak with respect to each other and to adults as well. That is a must. So I guess I brought that discipline with me. It never leaves.
And was there an adapting part of it where some things you had to change your methods?
The examinations here are different. For me, I start to prepare students earlier so they can ease into the process and not have the added stress of learning everything all together. Learning is for life. And whatever you impart to students should not only be to pass an examination. For example, there is the new theme of cross-cultural migration. There are many students with a migration background. They are made aware of what is happening in the news around the world. They can think and say, how does this affect me even in school? And then share their views. Later on, they will be able to put their thoughts in an essay.
And so it's way more critical or even creative in Germany as opposed to how it was done in Jamaica.
Depending on the subject I was teaching. In Jamaica, I taught 4 subjects. Here, I'm focused on English. Yes.
Oh, wow. And that's what you're teaching them in English about cross-cultural migration. Funny.
Yes, yes, yes. And so they have to learn a lot about what it means to move from your country, settle in another, the process of acculturation. Do I adapt to the values of this new country? Do I hold on to mine, or do I merge? And these are interesting conversations.
I think for all of us, because all of us are dealing with something similar. And it's still, the people around you have almost Jamaicanized as opposed to you Germanizing. And I think that that's fantastic.
Thank you.
What is your secret?
I take my culture with me. I live it. It's a part of me. And so even in the classes I teach, well, for adults, they always get a taste of Jamaica.
Oh, look
Always,
at that.
always. Like I have a group that we're doing persuasive English. My theme for this semester is the taste trail. And so we look on different spices and dips, but Jamaica is always there. You see, we lead, Andrew. We lead when it comes.
Wait. What are you
Oh,
trying to say about Trinidad right now? Why did I hear something?
I see that there's a little competition between the folks from the Caribbean here. You know, I am a Haitian American, so the
Yeah,
Trinis and the Jamaicans can fight it out. I'm just gonna
yeah.
watch. Yeah.
But I really think I am an ambassador for my country. I take with me lessons learned, whether good or bad. And I try to infuse that also in my teachings and in what I do.
I think you as a poet, is this a theme that's also covered in your poetry?
Yes, I normally write about situations, how I feel, because I am a very reflective person. So if I notice behaviors or just a lot is happening around me, then I try to document that in poetry. Yes.
And where do you draw the most inspiration from, thinking back in your childhood on the islands of Jamaica and the hummingbirds and the palm trees, or in the Black Forest, in the nature of Germany?
I merge both. For me now, the experiences in my upcoming book, the third one, I look more on our history, our culture. I think of roosters crowing in the morning. I think of traditions that we have, especially in the peak of summer to cook on a wood fire. And then I compare that with grilling in the forests here. So it merges.
This is the journey that you're taking us on, how you reconcile the two worlds that you've grown up in.
Hmm.
As a Caribbean person,
Hmm.
we're storytellers.
Hmm.
Everybody finds their own way to do it. And I love that you document these things in your poetry. But for me, when I was younger, I used to write poems, maybe for like a girlfriend on their birthday or something, or our
Hmm.
anniversary. And I think that they were just being nice, but I don't actually feel like I said anything real. Um, and these days, I
Hmm.
don't even have to think that hard because I can just use ChatGPT to create a poem for maybe my current girlfriend. And yeah, it could rhyme and it might sound nice, but
Hmm.
it's really hard to make it not feel empty.
Really?
And for me, and you've already published 2 books, yeah, I have heard some of them, but as a storyteller, why choose that medium? It's one of the harder ones to express yourself, in my
Really?
opinion.
I really don't think it's one of the harder forms. I We all think differently. And even in school, when I was going to school, I used poetry to document key points in a lesson. It was always with me. So I would create mnemonics, and for every letter, I summarized what the teacher said. I was done. I remember in
Yeah.
university, one of my lecturers was walking and said, What are you doing? I said, I just wrote my notes. He said, Where? I said, Here. He took it up, he read it, and said, This is a poem. I said, I know. I said, Doesn't it contain everything I need? He said, Actually, yes. I said, Thank you, I'm done.
What?
Yes. I have always used this method.
Very, very smart.
Yes.
Now, uh, you said you draw inspiration from nature,
Yes.
from little fleeting moments.
Yes, I do that still. I remember in my second book, I wrote a poem based on the chairs in the library. I was in one of our team meetings and I was just looking on these orange chairs.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And in my head, I'm thinking they are silent, they are watching, they're observing. And at the same time, they cushion people and provide a safe space for them. It eases the burden, it takes you off your feet. And in that, they are there to provide support, but they are also the silent listeners. And that is what led me to write that poem, just looking on chairs.
When you said something about the chairs, it reminded me a lot about a talk that you gave where you said that young people today are afraid to fall.
Oh, yes.
And the chairs that you notice that they can catch you if you fall, you know, that kind of support, that kind of comfort. Was that true for you growing up?
I grew up feeling free, knowing that help and support was always available. I noticed in my classrooms, however, that the children don't want to answer questions because they don't want to give a wrong answer. So I have to remind them it's okay to share what you think. We all can have different views. It doesn't mean that your answer is wrong and mine is right. Things may not always work in our favor. So when something is going wrong, look at it, assess it, and think of how can I make this better? There is an incident that I love to share with my students. In school, I did not like physics, and I never applied myself.
Okay.
It's hard to write a poem on physics.
Well, later on I did. But I remember my first physics test. I did nothing but write my name on the paper.
Wow.
And my teacher drew a perfect zero. And I told my students, and they said, "You got zero?" I said, "Yes." I was proud of the zero, but he didn't have to write anything on my paper in red. And then we had a debate.
Oh,
What the
interesting.
teacher should have done and what the student thinks. Yes. And then I think that helps to motivate them as well, to let them know it's okay. But the thing is, you never get a zero twice. Once is enough.
And you said you never feared this feeling, yeah? But
No,
after getting a zero, it must have some sort of anxiety associated with it, no?
no. It just took me a little longer to like my teacher. And I never use red ink to mark any paper. That was the lesson from that.
This is good advice, I think, to tell anybody. It's just not everybody can follow it, you know?
True,
It is hard sometimes to take negative feedback.
true. But we have to learn to deal with it. That is life. In Jamaica, I also taught theater arts. Kids had to write and produce their own work. So in doing that, I took them into developing whatever talents they had. It could be writing poetry, stories, or songs, whichever it was. And in the midst of that, I had what is called a literacy pageant.
Oh,
And
interesting.
this was to help students to build their literacy skill with no shame in their game. It helps children to speak about their experiences in a way that they can. Sometimes you go
Yes.
through things and you don't know, how can I share this with someone?
Mhm.
How can I let them know what I feel or think about a particular situation? If you had to do that under the vice of drama, then it works. It works.
Because I think that what you're saying is very important for helping younger people really express themselves. So thank you for sharing that. And
Mm-hmm.
then as a I think it's easier somehow in Freiburg for us Caribbean people to find elements of home because they're so welcoming to our cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow they have Jamaican parties. But I also think that your husband has created a few of them as well.
Yes. So he has a sound system, and my daughter plays in some clubs too after work.
Oh, wow.
Yes. There's an upcoming event at Dietenbach. I'll give you the day. It will be an all-day event. And it's wonderful. It's nice to be out in the open, listening to Caribbean music, eating Caribbean food. It's wonderful.
So then in this party there's going to be soca, right? Obviously, because that is the soul of the Caribbean.
Andrew, reggae is the soul. Take that back. Reggae music. That's why you're called Bob
No,
Marley's grandson.
Yeah, genau. Ja.
There's a time for your
Also.
soca, but reggae music is all the time.
I'm teasing. I really like that you, throughout this period of time that you've been here for the 6 years, you've managed to stay rooted to your base culture while still growing in this German culture, and how you've gotten your family also to share the Jamaican culture within the context of Germany. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
And I've been here for 3 years. I think I'm trying to do the same thing with Trinidad culture, just on a scale below, because that's what Trinidad is to Jamaica, just a scale below.
You have to top up your game. Come on, Andrew.
Yeah. Don't let the Jamaicans intimidate you.
Exactly. Don't do that.
Oh gosh. No,
So
but
before we wrap up, Cheryl, how can our listeners connect with your work? Where can they find your books, your writing, and your projects?
So my books are available on Amazon, and they can find me on Instagram under Cheryl's Verses,
Okay, great.
on Facebook as well, and I'm also on LinkedIn.
Wonderful.
Yes.
All right. So just want to say this was a great interview with Cheryl. Thank you again. And, if anyone has an interest in Learneezee blogs, we have one for Web 3.0 on our Medium platform. And please go online and sign up for the Learneezee newsletter on our site, learneezee.com. And I just want to say thank you to Cheryl, to Andrew for a great conversation, and keep learning easy. Bye-bye.